Welcome back students to your political science class. We have completed our chapter 1 number 1. In that we have seen how the world was divided into two blocks. The first block was US and another was USSR, and how these two powers were attracting other countries to join their power and follow their ideology. US followed capitalism and USSR followed socialism, or we can also say that communism. Before we start our today's class, let's know some of the terms which are basics for our political science. So we'll start with capitalism. Capitalism is an ideology. You have to understand capitalism is an ideology which is adopted by different countries to run their economies. And it is an economic system in which the means of production of goods or services are privately owned and operated for a profit. In the countries which follows this ideology will allow their people to own property privately, means that they will be solely and only individual owner of that particular thing. That thing can be a factory, a house, a bicycle, a, a company, or anything, and they can use those things to make their profit. For example, here it is one factory picture is given, and this factory will be owned by one single individual, and it can be used for making profit, for making more and more money. So that was capitalism. For example, which country follows capitalist economy? That is, we can give most popular country, that is US. Next we proceed to socialism. Socialism is also an ideology in which all the production and all the owners, all the things will be owned by state, and no individual will be having right to own anything individually. For example, a land of a farmer will also not be owned by that farmer. It will be owned directly by the state, and the state will tell what we have to do and where we have to do. So this was socialism. Example of a socialist country we can give. India can be example of socialism because some of the properties are also belong to the government, and it can be it uses those property to make their own investments, and to do welfare for their BPL people and some of those people. And India is also a capitalist country because it allows the people to own factories, companies, and make profit from them, allow them to make profit from them. So we can say that India is also a capitalist country and India is also a socialist country. Next, our term is communism. The government owns everything and is responsible for providing equality for all. In this term, we will understand that government, everything will be owned by government, and government is working for providing equality in their society. For example, country which owns communism, we can give example of China. China was totally following communism, but now it has adopted some points of capitalism, but it is not fully capitalist economy. It follows strongly communism. And we can give example of USSR also. USSR, but it is not present. It divided into so many countries, but USSR also followed the ideology of communism. But mostly they call us socialism. And as many people got confused between socialism and communism because these don't both term has so many similarities among them. So people get use these term uh, commonly, or so that's it for these terms. We understood capitalism, we understood communism, we understood socialism. So we are ready to start our second chapter. Students, let me introduce to the genius. Karl Marx. He is also known as the father of communism. He was the first one who gave the idea that everything can be owned by the state and state can work for the equality, and state can also initiate for the welfare to everyone. Remember, he gave his idea in the theoretical form, not in a practical form. He didn't practice his own idea in any country. There were other people who adopted his ideology by reading his book or got inspired by his book and enforced his ideology in their own country. This is the symbol of communism. This is the picture of big follower. His name is Lenin. He is known as big follower because he was the first to adopt Karl Marx ideology and started working into his ideology into a theory to a practitioner. He is also known as a big practitioner because it was very impossible to adopt an unknown ideology into a practical way. He emerged as a hero during the period of Russian Revolution. If you remember your uh, ninth class history, in that you have studied that Russian Revolution was started from 1917, and he was the part of Soviet Union at that time only. Start our chapter 2, the end of bipolarity. Here the word bipolarity means bi means two and polarity means, here the word polar means the science word pole, how the poles attract to each other. So here in this world, in our world, there were also two poles who were attracting the rest of the world. One pole was USA and another pole was USSR. And USA used to follow capitalism and USSR followed communism. And because of that, they became enemies of each other. There were cold competition between them. Uh, in let's If you look in the front page of our this chapter, you will see that some of the people breaking one wall, and that wall is Berlin Wall. Remember, Berlin is the capital of Germany. After the Second World War, Berlin divided into two. One part, the western part, went into the hand of USA power. Matlab, that means they went into capitalist power, and the eastern power went into the hand of USSR. That means communist power. This wall was built during the peak point of Cold War, that was 1961. And in 1989, the people started breaking this wall because they were not happy with some one of these ideology or one of these alliances. So in this chapter, we are going to learn what was that ideology and why people were not happy with that ideology or by that government. By the way, that ideology was communism ideology. That means people were not happy with the government of USSR. What was Soviet system? Soviet system was the system adopted by USSR government to rule their country. The Union of Soviet system came into being after the Socialist Revolution in Russia 1917. The revolution was inspired by the idea of socialism, and the need for equality in society was opposed to capitalism. So, so we have already seen that the socialism was opposed to the ideology of capitalism, and they believed that a society should work for egalitarian, means equality for everyone. After the Second World War, the Eastern Europe countries, after the Soviet army had liberated them from fascist forces, came under the control of USSR. Here, fascist force means Germany army came under the control of Soviet army, means USSR army. The Eastern European countries came under the control of USSR. There was change in the economic and political system of USSR. Then the Soviet system became more developed than rest of the world except the US. So after this, USSR was able to develop itself more, but it was not able to develop itself as US was able to develop itself. In this picture, you can see how big USSR was. It was having 14 countries within it. You can say that 14 republics. This is the symbol of communism. However, the Soviet system became very bureaucratic and authoritarian. It made life very difficult for its citizens. When everything was owned by the state, it was making the people's life very difficult because it became very much bureaucratic and uh, authoritarian. For example, I'm giving you example of a government office. When you go into inside a government office and you have some work, and they make you to go one table to another table, and that makes your work very difficult. And the same thing was happened with the citizens of USSR. In the arms race, the Soviet Union merged to match the US from time to time, but at the great cost. So here it is said that Soviet Union was paying high amount of money to maintain arms race with US. But for US, it was very easy to maintain arms race because it was having so much of finance. But Soviet Union was not having that much of finance, but it was because it was having competition, so it has to spend a lot of money in their arms race. I hope you have understood today's class. In the next class, we will be understanding Gorbachev and the disintegration of USSR, the reasons for which USSR disintegrated. If you have any doubt, please let me know through your messages. Thank you for watching this. Bye bye.